The story of how I met Sean Henriques, who would become Sean Paul. I had a studio on 8 Jacksonville Road. This would have been about 1993, I think, when I came back to Jamaica. I was in Toronto for a year. Before that, I was in Montreal, Canada. And I come back and open a small studio. It was a digital setup. It was about half the size of this room. But the exciting thing is that it was a digital setup. It was recording to hard disk, um, which was a first of its kind in Jamaica. And I was doing basically jingles and radio adverts and things like that. Still producing a little bit, but didn't really have an interest in dancehall yet per se. I was producing a lot of hip hop stuff, like when I was in Montreal and in Toronto. So I was kind of extending that whole experience. Came back to Jamaica, and I'm still producing. My younger brother at the time, Zachary started. Um, well, he didn't start it, but he joined a sound system called Syndicate Disco, and he was in this sound system, which is an uptown sound system, and he was a selector and he was a mic man. And basically, Zachary wanted to record dub plates. So when he realized that I had a system where I could quickly record um, to a hard disk, and just load up all the rhythms in the computer, and bring artists and record very quickly, and he would take the DAT tapes, digital audio tapes, down to like arrows or one of the dub plates, and then cut the actual acetates. But the great facility about it was that you could move very quickly. You could have multiple rhythms in the system all at once. You could get the artists in and out. And if somebody made a mistake, it was digital. You could just stop. You could just like punch it, pick it up like a recording, etc. Again, seems commonplace today, but back then it was like a really big deal in terms of digital technology. So I had the studio running, and Zach was basically out there on the street cutting dub plates, playing his Syndicate sound system. I would have been about maybe 23 years old, I guess, 24, somewhere around there. And Zach would have been, he's 4 years younger than me. So he's still a teenager. And he's going out there, and he went to a nightclub, a night spot, really, not a club, called Raphael's, which was really like an ice cream place, like an outdoor, like a restaurant that had like an ice cream thing, like around the back, and they had like a live night, kind of like a karaoke night type of thing, but not karaoke with a machine, but like with a live band. So basically, a live band would be playing, and people could come up there and request a song, and the band, if they knew it, they could play it, and then they would sing or they would perform. He saw this guy over there performing, like DJing on the mic, basically, and just thought he sounded really good. And he came back and told me, he's like, listen, there's this guy which I heard DJ, and I think he sounds really, really good. And I gave him your card. Now, I had cards because I was doing jingle work. So I'd made up business cards to hand out to people and to go and take meetings and say, like, I can do jingles. And I can't remember what it said, I guess, Too Hard Records or Hard Sound Recording, something like that. So he had the cards, so, and he was like, Zach was trying to help me, like, get the studio going and this whole thing. So he handed Sean a card, and he met this guy, Sean Henriques. So he tells me about it. He says, this guy is a wicked DJ. He sounds just like Supercat. It's awesome. I'm like, okay, is that really a good thing that he sounds just like Supercat? He's like, no. It's just the same tone of voice, but it's different. Lyrically, it's different. Like what he... So I said, okay, fine. So Sean had the card, called me, and, said, hey, I met your brother, and he said that you have a studio, and you just came back from Canada, and blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, come true. So Sean came up by the studio, and I met him. And again, exciting because like nobody had a studio back then. Nobody had home studios because the technology didn't exist. You didn't have laptops with Logic and stuff. Like none of that happened. So to go to a studio, I had to go to like a big ass studio. I had to go to Mixing Lab or Record Factory or Penthouse or someplace like that, Steele and Clevey, someplace like with a big board and a big tape machine, and access to it was extremely limited because it was expensive and it was people's time. So only big artists really were allowed to go into recording studios back then. So small artists like you like have no hope. So this was a big thing. He came to check out this quote unquote studio, and he saw my setup and my little digital thing, and I mean, like it worked quite fine, studio, and it played. So Sean came up there and he checked out the studio. So me and him kind of started a friendship. And he was there hanging out. I'm pursuing my dreams of being like a record producer. I have no intention of Like, I don't know anything about artist management. That's the furthest thing from my mind. So I'm there still making beats and being this record producer guy. So Sean starts to come up by the studio every day now to basically kind of like hang out, pass through, see what's going on. I'm making music in there, I'm playing beats and stuff. So he comes, he brings his brother Jason, and they're coming through the studio. And, eventually it starts a little flow of younger artists. He comes up there, he meets Dadagon, rest in peace. Dadagon was introduced to me by another friend of mine at the time, Dina Chambers, who is Jimmy Cliff's son, one of his sons, Odessa Chambers' brother. And I'd met him through this guy named Paul Maggie, and it was all links and connecting to people. He brought Dadagon to me as a wicked DJ that he was trying to break. Sean met up with Dadagon. They formed a friendship. They put together the Dutty Cup crew. You got Massey, Kid, Lugaman, from Sean's side. He pulled them in. He knew them from Uptown and from Hillel. And you had Kid Corrupt, who came in from the other side. He was friends with Don Ute. And he had come by the studio as well. And they all kind of started this little friendship. And the crew formed. Mr. Chicken became a part of the crew because I had done a jingle. I think it was for like NCB or something, and I DJ'd the jingle and handed it in. They loved it, and then they wanted so much to do it on camera. And I wasn't trying to be a DJ or artist, and I was like, I'm not going to do it on camera. And Chicken used to sell roses at the stoplight with that crew down by Lady Musgrave. And we used to pass by the stoplight and see him all the time, me and my brother. And we know that he loved the sound system thing, and he used to hang out around Renaissance Sound System, which was right there in Lady Musgrave around the corner. He used to help them lift box and do stuff and whatever. So I just told him one day at a stoplight, I was like, yo, I did a jingle thing and I need somebody to go on camera to DJ it. I don't know if would you be interested in something like that? Like, it pays money. And he was like, yeah, wicked. So he ended up going and doing this jingle on TV. People saw him and were like, Chicken, you turn DJ now. And everybody at the stoplight knew him, all Renaissance. People knew he was on television, he was DJing, even though it was my voice. But he was a person actually doing it. So now he just kind of became an artist overnight, pretty much. So he embraced it fully, of course. So then he ended up coming up by my studio and linking up Sean and everybody else. And, ended up being a recording artist, Mr. Chicken, rest in peace. But yeah, that's how the whole thing was kind of put together. And it started from that kind of home base at 8 Jacks Hill Road. And the more work that came in there, the more sound systems came in there to cut dub plates. And of course, these guys would be like hanging around. And back then it was pretty much like, it was like a gate, open gate with like a property. And I had like one corner was my little apartment. And it was pretty much the doors like open all day, basically. And people just kind of drive up and just say, oh, well, go on, and come in and stuff like that. And my living room had a PlayStation in there and like, Sega Genesis or whatever, so big screen TV. So we have video games running in one room and like right across the hall, basically, little studio was there. So like you bounce in between your turn to play FIFA or your turn to record a dub plate. And that's how we're living. And we're kids, we're like in our early 20s. Them guys are hanging outside, smoking weed and stuff in the middle of the day. You're up in Jacks Hill, it's nice and it's cool. There's no traffic, there's no people pestering you or bugging outside. There's no crime, there's no, nothing like that. It's not that kind of environment that you'd normally expect to see like in a typical like kind of dancehall studio scenario somewhere. You know what I'm saying? So it was a really unique experience. And the more sound systems came up there to cut dubs, the more opportunities Sean got to cut dub plates because he's basically like a resident DJ, him and Dutty Cup crew there at the studio. So everybody that passes through there cutting dub plates, and Sean's getting an opportunity now to showcase his talents, you know what I mean? So he's cutting dub plates for Adonai Sound, he's cutting dub plates for King Addies with Babyface, Landface, he's cutting dub plates for Stone Love, Travelers, Same Renaissance, Syndicate, all kind of sound systems that I can't remember right now. He used to come up there and cut dubs. And so it helped him grow. It gave my studios a reputation as like this cool spot to come and record. I got to meet artists out of it. And artists got to know who Sean was. And it just, it propelled everybody's career. But like that was kind of the genesis of the whole way that Sean really was introduced to the world of dancehall. He had done recordings before. He was hanging out around the guys from Third World Band and Carrot Jarrett. There's a music video called, I think it's Long Time is the name of it. You can go on YouTube and search it. Black and white video of Sean performing. To me, that's his first known release recording. And probably his first music video as far as I know. But yeah, he was on this very cultural path at the time. He's hanging around Third World, So they're singing cultural type of songs. And more kind of reggae kind of songs, and he's a DJ. By the time Sean came to me though, and he was doing those same kind of records and talking about, seat and the youths them out the street and have nothing to eat and like those type of lyrics that he was doing. And I said to him, I was like, Sean, honestly though, nobody's going to believe that coming from you because you're this uptown kid and, you live in Norbrook and you went to Hillel Academy and you know what I'm saying? And Sean was like, yeah, but my life was rough, germs and, my pops went to prison and we didn't have nothing and my mom used to have to paint and we have to grow our own vegetables in the backyard and she used to sell paintings. His mom's a painter, artist, sell paintings to survive and we're not rich. And I said, Sean, I get that, you know what I'm saying? But just people just won't believe you just because of the nature of where you come from in society and how you look and everything else. I encourage him to say, like, why don't you try doing a girl's song? Because a good-looking kid, and, girls liked him, and it was obvious to see. If you went out with Sean or places, or just, the stories I'd heard about him, just being, a kid in Uptown, and, girlfriends and stuff which he had. And he tried it, and he ended up with the Baby Girl, Don't Cry No More, which was that first record I put out on that Fearless Rhythm. And that kind of started a whole trajectory of Sean doing like these girl songs. And I kept pushing him and saying, listen, that works. You have a hardcore voice like a Supercat, but those type of hardcore lyrics you want to sing, nobody wants to hear them from somebody who looks like you or who is you, basically. And he kind of reluctantly agreed, but then as it started to pick up steam, then he fully got on board. And we kind of created this whole persona of Sean Paul, the girls them overall. That was the name, right? And kind of pushed that whole theme behind Sean and his career. So that was the beginning of how I met Sean. That relationship continued in that manner for a couple of years, basically hanging out in the studio doing dub plates, release one song from him, 2 songs from him, until eventually the phone was ringing, basically. His name was on the back of the 45s, and people were like calling my studio, my home office, basically, and calling for bookings and details about Sean. And literally, he would be like right there sitting on the couch and I'd answer the phone and somebody like calling, like, want to book Sean Paul for a show. And I was like, oh, okay. And I look at him and like, somebody's booking me for a show. And he'd be like, yeah, go ahead. And they're like, how many tickets? I could look at him and say, how many, you want me to go with you? And he's like, yeah, come. I was like, okay, send 2 tickets. And how much? And, small fees at the time we're negotiating for $1,000, $1,500, something like that. And, I just said send 2 tickets. And to me, it was fun. I was like, all right, I'll just go. Free trip. Hey, why not? You know what I mean? Me and Sean are friends and we're just going to go and kind of hang out together. But after doing that, like a whole, few trips here and there and a couple trips to New York and some Caribbean islands and some things like that, I realized it was getting so much, like the work was so involved. It was taken away from my production career. So I went and had a booking agent. I'd met Jerome Hamilton on a trip to Barbados, I think. He was booking some other artists on there, latest on Merciless, and we met up and were on the trip together. Got to talking, and I was like, listen, would you take on my artist, Sean? He's like, yeah, sure. And, so that kind of freed me up to do production work, And then we had had to go and get some pictures done now to make promo pictures to give to the press and have photographers. And eventually what happened is that I realized that I was his manager. Because it just led from one thing to another for me helping to organize this and getting my booking agent and getting a photo session going on at my studio and etc. and doing a bunch of things and as managing Sean. So that's how it kind of morphed into that relationship. He just started telling people, yeah man, just link my management, link germs. It was, no contract, no big proposal, no promises, no nothing like that. Just off the strength of like a really good relationship and good working relationship. And most importantly, to be honest with you, it was based off of good music. I must say that because I'm the type of person in my career in the music industry, like I have to love the music. I can't just do it for the business part of it. Some people can just lock it off and just do it for the business. They don't really care about the music. The music can be crap, good, indifferent, doesn't matter. They're just salespeople. They're just like, hyping stuff up and, trying to make the money off of it. And for me, maybe good or bad, the music has to be good for me. So if it's an artist I'm working with, it has to be good music. If I'm doing a production, if I'm mixing a song for somebody, anything like that in my career, the music itself has to be good. And we were making good records, and Sean was making really good records. Even the records he wasn't making with me, he'd go out and record records for other people, and he started to work, with Steel and Clevie and with Penthouse and Arrows and, you know what I mean, and Tony Kelly and all of these various kind of producers. Eventually to Lenky, Renaissance, like the hit records that everybody knows. And the music was good. So as long as the music was good and I was happy with what I was doing musically. And Sean was a very easy person to get along with because he too believed in the same thing as me, in good music. This was his first priority. Sean was all about like, I don't like that verse, I want to record it again. You know what I mean? I want to do that part over. I don't like this lyric. I want to change this. I don't like how my voice sounds today. I feel sick. I'm going to come back. I'm going to re-record it. He's very, very particular about it must sound good. The music must be good. He's way more interested in good music than he was in the fame or the fashion or the girls or anything else. So we had that in common, definitely. But that was pretty much the genesis of how I met Sean Paul, and then the whole thing came into being, and I ended up being his manager, and started a wonderful career for both of us.